Morning, everyone. The People's Party of Canada has released their headquarters financial report, and in order to find that, you can follow the link in the description. When you get to the where the link takes you, scroll down and find People's Party of Canada in the list on the left-hand side, and then 2019 on the right-hand side, and then find parties, and then click People's Party of Canada, and then search selected, and then you're into the report, and you can read the report using this drop-down menu here. And the most interesting page is probably 3B, and that's kind of where the party spent the money. And you can see that it's on BOS, which is the leaders race essentially, and the by-elections, which makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. And so I've talked about this before. Having a leadership race costs about $20 million, and running the election campaign for a leader of a party costs about $20 million. And having the down ticket races funded costs about $20 million. And those are rough calculations. And those are the ones that I used prior to the 2020 or 2019 election. So those are just very basic numbers. And if you don't have $40 million, you spend at where you think is the most important places to spend at the time. And you don't have a crystal ball, right? So you can't see the crisis that happens the following Monday after you spent money here. So here's what the election looked like financially, right? So that's the interesting news. I don't know. I'm not the right guy to look at financials from any other angle other than the political angle, right? So there was some upset about people who thought that the money should be spent in other places and blah, 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 all sorts of controversy a little while back that I kind of stayed out of. But to look at the financials, to me, it seems to make sense to me. But I'm not the right guy to critically look at this from a forensic accountant kind of viewpoint, right? So if you want to look at this information, I've provided the link. Please do have a look, and if there's anything that stands out to you that I've missed, please do let me know. And like I said, you can have sour grapes about it, but if you don't have $40 million, you're kind of triaging. You're kind of doing what you can with what you've got at the time, and you can't see into the future, right? Like, so if it seems like a good idea to spend money on Monday the 7th, right, and then by Friday the whatever, it doesn't look like such a good idea. We see that now, right? But at that point in time, the money's gone and that decision's made, right? So it's interesting, like looking at this stuff in a historical perspective and understanding that the context that surrounds the spends, right? Very interesting. So moving into the news, Dr. Tam and Patty Haydu, the Minister of Health, Minister of Public Health, are interesting figures in this COVID-19 situation. And I don't think they're very credible. I don't think they've done a good job. And I'm not alone in that. Here's Dr. Tam, and she's saying from CTV, this fall will be a period of challenge in the coronavirus fight, Canada's top doctor says. Okay, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen evidence of that in any other places that have opened up or that have schools opening up or whatever. The United States has got a lot of cases, but their death rate is very low. So those are interesting facts, right? And the coronavirus, COVID-19, doesn't follow the seasonal flu. So they said that it might, be a big resurgence in the fall, but we haven't seen evidence of that, or we haven't seen evidence that it's similar to the flu and that it's seasonal, right? So I'm interested to see what happens in the next coming weeks, because it's not like in Ontario, we're getting lower and lower cases every day. Ontario records fewer than 100 new COVID-19 cases for 6 days in a row. And this is not worldwide, but Sweden's doing the same. They've got 0 deaths the last, I think, week, maybe 2 weeks now too, which is similar to, I don't know how many deaths have happened in Ontario in the last week, but we're certainly down to single digits in deaths daily, which is much better than we were at the height of this thing, which indicates that it's going away without a vaccine. So moving into having a vaccine, and especially a mandated vaccine that was rushed to market, seems like a bad idea. It seems like an overreaction to this thing that's going away by itself at this point in time. Here is JP Lucy, and he says, so it's dangerous to use hand sanitizers that have been rushed to market, but we should all take a COVID-19 vaccine the minute it's developed. Huh. And this is CBC News, and they say more companies produced hand sanitizer early in the pandemic when demand was high and supply was low, and now more products are being recalled for impurities. Yes, when you rush things to market, things happen that are unintended. Here's Mr. Fury, Anthony Fury, I think. Oh yeah, it is Anthony Fury. Okay. Mandatory vaccine in Canada would not go over well. No, and it's not just me that thinks this wouldn't go over well. The polls that they do, and I don't put much weight in the polls. I don't, because you can pretty much, the way, depending on how you ask a question, or the sampling of like, oh, this percentage is women, and from women 98% agree with this, right? But just discount the men and they get what we want, right? Like, so just you can pull any stat, make any headline out of any set of statistics you want. It's just ridiculous. Okay, back to this. Canada is currently weighing whether or not to make COVID-19 vaccine in some way mandatory, according to Navdeep Bains, the Liberal government's Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry. Good luck getting everyone on board with that one. As if various measures imposed upon Canadians hasn't been contentious enough, imposing mandatory vaccine could easily prove to be the most controversial yet. With regards to making it mandatory, keeping it voluntary, that's something we'll closely work with Dr. Tam and Minister Haydu on to determine whether we can get this stage, or to determine when we get to that stage, how to proceed, Bain said on Wednesday as he responded to a question at a press conference about signing vaccine deals with Pfizer and Moderna. It'll be an even tougher task to get people on board with mandatory vaccines if the key decision makers are Dr. Theresa Tam and Public Health Minister Patty Haydu. They both face credibility issues following their multiple flip-flops on decisions throughout the pandemic, such as the value of travel bans and face masks. Statistics Canada released a report last month on how the trust factor undoubtedly influences people's decisions on getting a vaccine, noting that the degree to which individuals have trust in policymakers and public health authorities has been associated with their willingness to engage in public health measures such as vaccinations. It's hard to blame them. On any given day, you can turn on the television and hear medical experts offer seemingly contradictory opinions on all aspects of COVID-19, including the timing and efficacy of the various vaccines currently being tested. There's just so much uncertainty out there right now. This is in large part understandable because of the newness of COVID-19. Researchers haven't had years to study it, but it's for that reason that some people are extra wary. The pollsters, the Angus Reid Institute polled Canadians on these issues recently and found that while 46% of respondents would get a vaccine right away, that seems high. 32% said they would wait a while, and for that third who are planning to take their time, 3/4 of them are doing it because they're worried of the negative side effects of a vaccine brought to market so quickly. The pollster then asked about mandatory vaccines, and opinions are split. While they didn't ask about a blanket policy to make it nationwide, they did ask respondents how they felt about policies directed at specific venues. 3/4 of respondents believe that healthcare workers should be mandated to get vaccinated. This may seem like a no-brainer, but to some, one that healthcare workers themselves would welcome, but maybe not. Last year, the BC Nurses Union successfully fought the provincial government to remove a rule mandating nurses receive the flu shot, where they also pushed back against mandatory COVID-19 vaccines. I want to show you the nurses pushed back against the masking. So what happened was the BC government tried to make the flu shot mandatory. The nurses didn't want that, so the BC government then said, fine, you don't have to have the mandatory flu shot, but if you don't get it, you have to wear a mask and a little sign that says you weren't vaccinated for the flu. And they took it to court twice, and arbitrators decided that no masks were needed. And so this one's in Ontario, and then this one is in BC. Sorry, there's more replies. Where's the BC one? I'll find it, hold on. Here's the BC one. So masks no longer mandatory for BC nurses who haven't had the flu vaccine. So they were trying to do this using coercive measures just with the flu vaccine, and the vaccine, they couldn't make it mandatory, and the masks, they couldn't make that mandatory because partially, not fully, but the masks didn't control spread. They couldn't find any evidence to back up the presumption that the masks controlled spread at all. So they said, no, Not going to happen. Anyway, 2/3 agree that the COVID-19 vaccine should be mandatory for school attendance. Looked at one way, this would mean just adding one box to the list of many immunizations children need to get if they wish to attend public school in Canada. Then again, the flu shot is not mandatory for school children. It's just strongly recommended. When it came to the question of making it mandatory in the workplace, the response was split, almost 50-50. Any attempts from employers to enforce a rule will clearly be met with a divided response. Right now, a number of places already mandating testing, for example, are already mandating testing. If you want to visit someone in long-term care in Ontario, you have to prove you recently tested negative. Getting a test and injecting a hastily developed serum into your bloodstream are two different things, though. Yeah, very different things. Oh, here's the VC thing. And on the flip side of this whole vaccine thing is the criminals being released from jail for fear of them getting COVID-19. If social distancing and masking works, why are we releasing criminals? If either one of those things worked, why do the criminals need to be released? Right? And if there's no cases in the jails where they're being released or where they're being released from, why would they need to be released if there's no cases? I don't understand. Okay, here it is. Judges release growing number of accused of violent crimes due to COVID-19 fears. One is the accused getaway driver for a recent Toronto murder attempt. Another allegedly pistol whipped and tasered two in Ottawa over a drug debt. A third was allegedly involved in a Toronto strip mall shooting. A growing number of suspects arrested on serious criminal charges have been ordered released from custody in recent weeks by judges concerned about the spread of COVID-19 in Canada's prisons. These are extraordinarily dire times, a judge wrote Monday in a decision ordering the release of a man accused of firing a bullet through his ex-girlfriend's apartment window in Hamilton, Ontario. Although the courts have effectively shut down due to the pandemic, they have heard from detainees arguing they should be released from custody because of the new coronavirus. Okay, so why can we get courts together to hear those complaints, but we can't get courts together to hear other complaints? Why exactly? I doesn't make sense to me. If masks work, if social distancing works, if there's no cases in the prisons. Back to this. A flurry of court decisions suggested that even those accused of violent crimes are winning release. As one judge wrote, the pandemic has reordered the usual calculus. Crown prosecutors have been fighting the trend, arguing that COVID-19 is under control in prisons and that public confidence would be undermined if those facing serious charges were released. Given the size of our population, this is currently a very small risk factor, according to an April 1 memo filed in Ontario court by prosecutors, which said there were just 2 confirmed cases in provincial jails to date. But court records show that even those with long criminal histories have won release under various conditions, including a man with 23 convictions identified only by the initials TK. A judge wrote that in normal times, TK would likely have been detained following his latest arrest on drug trafficking charges. Yet, as mentioned, we currently live in extraordinary and very challenging times, he wrote, quoting a report that said prison inmates were more vulnerable to the new coronavirus because of their confined conditions. The judge went on to caution the pandemic was not a get-out-of-jail-free card, but mounting body of court rulings cite COVID-19 and decisions ordering the release of prisoners. Are we not all in confined living conditions at this point? Are we all not confined to our houses? So why are the prisoners any different? Why is releasing them into the public more safe for the public? I don't understand. Go grocery shopping. Go back into the public. Yes, enjoy your freedom, but stay at home, you criminal you. You didn't pay attention to the rules last time, but we know you're going to this time because COVID-19's out there. Like, what kind of crazy world do we live in? It's like living in Grand Theft Auto 5, where you just kind of stand there and look around. Did you guys see the shooting in Toronto yesterday? I had a tab saved for it, but apparently the guy made his Twitter feed not open to the public anymore after yesterday. But the guy in an apartment building was filming the shooting. A white car shot at a black car. One car got around the corner. The white car got away. The first car that shot, and the black car smashed into another car. Wild, man. Wild. Okay, back to this. Among those released was Kenyard Abshir, who allegedly rented a silver Chrysler 200 four-door sedan and drove 3 gunmen to a Toronto residence on March 13th. They waited until the victim returned home, chased him and shot him with a 9mm handguns, according to allegations made by the Crown in court. Police recovered 19 shell casings from the scene. Crown Counsel opined that this shooting is one of the worst ones he has seen. The victim was chased into his home, and the assailants were firing at him while the front door was still open, the judge wrote. The victim only survived because the attackers were not good shots, according to the Ontario Court March 27 ruling on Abshir's bail. The judge, however, ordered the release of the 19-year-old alleged getaway driver who was charged with attempted murder, aggravated assault, and 10 firearms-related offenses. The decision referred to his clean record, his mental health challenges, and the circumstantial case against him, but also cited COVID-19 and the greatly elevated risk posed to detainees from the coronavirus as compared to being at home on house arrest. Wow. That's our legal system at work, right? And they're using COVID-19 to excuse being soft on crime. A guy who's charged with attempted murder drove the getaway car. Like, imagine being the guy who got chased into his home and shot. Maybe this guy's going to pull up again in another rented Chrysler 300 or 200 or whatever he rented. It seems like the judges don't care about the rights of citizens to feel safe after a crime has been committed, and especially an atrocious crime like chasing somebody into their home with 9mm handguns, right? Aren't those illegal? It's impossible, right? Here is an interesting story. Ezra Levin says an Ontario mayor banned kids from playing hockey and has pandemic fines of up to $100,000, but for weeks he has secretly been using a city arena for him and his friends to play hockey at the cost of $1,000 per day. We caught him red-handed. And so this is Menzies, and he's at the rink, and Patrick Brown walks in with a bag to play hockey, I guess. And then Patrick Brown responds, and Patrick Brown says, I was made aware of some fake news from the discredited rebel media. They were pretending to be from Maple Leafs TV wanting to interview the mayor. I walked away when I realized it was rebel media. I don't do media interviews with an entity that has a track record on inciting hate. As for their story that my friends play hockey, yes, they do. When time allows, I play hockey regularly too. I love the sport. Brampton has been renting ice out in our facilities since June 24th when our city entered Stage 2. We're now in Stage 3, the event that even permits full shinny games. And then he tries to discredit the rebel. For those that want to know why most Canadian municipal, provincial, and federal politicians from all parties refuse interviews with the rebel's steady spiral downwards. This is interesting because there's a lot of responses, a lot of people talking about the ratio, but there's more likes than ratio. Patrick Brown was the former head of the Conservative Party of Ontario, the PC's Ontario, and he left after some interesting news, was quickly replaced by Doug Ford, and then he got into the municipal power game. It's interesting that he's not even addressing the allegation that Ezra is making here. He's just, he says, oh, we can play in Stage 2, blah, blah, blah. But it's interesting. The story here doesn't look like what Mr. Brown is making it sound like here. I won't play the video, but go watch the video for yourself. It's very interesting. And the last story for today is Quebec is protesting the corruption, I guess, and so they're gathering, and this is a big protest, I guess. I'll get me out of here. Hold on. And there's more. They marched down to the river and they had some conversations. They want the truth. They want to be free. We need the truth. We want to be free. And they're going to do it again in September at the Quebec Parliament. So it's interesting. There's people who are upset with the so-called, they're upset with. Hold on. I want to find out exactly their wording. They're wanting an end to corruption. It's hard because it's in French, and usually I look for like signs and stuff to say this is what they're saying because I don't want to attribute me to their I don't want to attribute my words to them. But it's in French, so they're protesting corruption essentially, and they're sick of it. That's it. They want the truth and they want to be free, and that's the core message, or one of the core messages. And I'm sorry that I'm scrolling up and down. It's just sometimes you see signs that are like that encapsulates it, but again, it's not quite. It's not as easy. It's not as straightforward as that in this one or in these videos that I've seen. So, but it's interesting. There's people who are out. There's people who are protesting. There's people who are showing up to to say this is corrupt. They're showing up to say we're done with being ignored. But I don't know. Canada's so big. I think we need a way to protest in a more unified way, in a way that's more nationwide, saying this isn't right. This isn't what we agree with. But I don't know. I don't know how to do it, because any protest that gains any traction gets demonized, right? You're yellow vests, or you're alt-right, or you're a white supremacist, and they're all the same. They're all interchangeable. You're racist. It's all the same, and it's all in order to get out of actually debating ideas where they want to silence any dissent, anything that's different from what they think, and what they think isn't based in science. And we see this in the HCQ, the hydroxychloroquine debate. We see this in the doctors being silenced off Facebook. We see this in the leadership refusing to use a 65-year-old drug that's been tested in humans and hasn't had any really negative consequences in hydroxychloroquine, in favor of vaccines that haven't been tested or developed in the usual order and the usual timeline in the usual way, right? So it's very, like, it seems like they don't care what the people want. It seems like they're going to tell us what we want, and they're going to cite, just like the judges cite the little report that says he's got a higher percentage, or she's got a higher percentage of getting the virus if they're in a crowded place like a prison, despite prisons only having 2 cases, right? Like, man, there has to be a way to have our system function and not release violent people. There has to be a way to have our system function and have people heard. There has to be a way to have our system function and not mandate vaccines or mandate masks, despite science saying this is not a good idea. This is not helpful to humans. It's not great to have masks on kids all day. It's not a good idea. It's not going to happen. It shouldn't happen. Anyway, that's enough out of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful